So now let's move on to a more specific aspect of muscle physiology, and that is motor units and motor unit recruitment. Now some of you are probably wondering what a motor unit is. Well, here's a picture of one for you. And a motor unit is two things. Firstly, it is a neuron called a motor neuron, and also a bundle of fibers that it controls. So think about the muscle fibers that I taught you about in the last class, and those are grouped together in bundles of what are called motor units. Okay, in each muscle there are a range of muscle fibers with different sizes and strengths. And so depending on the type of work that you are doing, different types of muscle fibers are going to be activated, and it is the motor neuron that activates them in its bundle of fibers that it controls. So when you are doing lighter or easier hypertrophy training, the smaller, weaker fibers called low threshold fibers are used first, while the bigger, stronger ones called high threshold fibers are only recruited when the work is getting very hard towards the end of the exercise, just like I taught you with Henneman's size principle last class. So this is why training with a close proximity to failure in your sets is very important, because you must train close to failure to recruit more of your muscle fibers, especially the bigger ones. And the closer to failure the set is taken, the more bigger fibers are recruited. And as I said, you want to train close to failure, but not to failure constantly, as that will be too exhausting for the muscles and joints, which was actually found to be the case by a study called Resistance Exercise Overtraining and Overreaching: Neuroendocrine Responses, published in 1997. Now, when a motor nerve stimulates the fibers that it controls, all of them within that unit will respond to the stimulation, but not all motor units are activated during a muscle contraction. The number of motor units involved in a contraction depends on the load imposed on the muscle, because that is then correlated with the amount of force production necessary. So when you require more force production, your muscles are going to stimulate a larger number of motor units. Makes sense, right? So with lighter loads, a smaller number of motor units are recruited, and the strength of the contraction is lower, and thus the quality of the tension is lower, which is why you need to do not only more reps, but go closer to failure. But with heavier loads, more or even almost all of the motor units will be recruited, and with maximum loads, all of your motor units are recruited due to the need for maximum force production, as found by McDonough and Davis in 1984. However, luckily for people like me who are prone to injury because of health conditions, or who just don't enjoy lifting maximum loads, moving faster when lifting lighter loads and working on explosivity under load will also recruit more bigger motor units, as taught by Chad Waterbury with the NSCA. And something else that is really interesting that I learned from him is that the largest numbers of the biggest motor units are only activated by the heaviest loads, and why most people do not know their true strength and could actually be able to do things they might see as superhuman if they needed to and tried, such as lifting a car off of their child, or something extreme like that in a state of emergency, because when you are in that state of emergency, the brain sends signals to the nervous system and the motor neurons to recruit all necessary motor units, especially all of the biggest. So that is why it is possible for people to lift cars off of their children or do similar things such as strongman feats. But this high level of strength can only actually happen in a short burst, because as you should remember from the last class, the largest fibers fatigue the most quickly. So the level of muscle fiber recruitment and neural efficiency that is required for lifting maximum loads is what strength trainers are training for. And now you're probably wondering, well, how long exactly does maximum strength last? Well, in the Principles of Neuroscience textbook, published by Elsevier in 1981 and edited by Columbia University professors Eric Kendall, James Schwartz, and Thomas Giselle, states that, as I taught in the last class, when lifting max loads, the largest motor units are recruited first and are the first to fatigue, and they fall out of commission after only 10 seconds. So that is why when you are lifting maximum loads, you're only going to be doing 1 or 2, maybe 3 reps tops. Okay, you only have about 10 seconds of maximum force production in the tank at one time, and you will need to rest for a long period of about 5 minutes in order to recover that maximum force production and be able to do it again. So now that we understand motor units, what practical training implications can we gather gather from this data on them. There are 3 ways to maximize motor unit recruitment that I learned from Chad Waterbury with the NSCA based upon that scientific literature. The first is to train with maximum loads of 85% or more of your 1 rep max, or what you would be able to do for 1 to 3 repetitions in order to build strength. And if you're someone like me who is at high risk for injury, or you just don't see a need for lifting that heavy, which is reasonable, you could also just lift over 60% of your 1 rep max, or in the 3 to 6 rep range. Because remember that in the study I quoted earlier, they said that was enough. So your loads do not absolutely have to be maximum, as long as you are doing some sort of heavy lifting and hypertrophy for strength, as well as some basic strength training once in a while, okay? That will be very important to maximizing motor unit recruitment, as well as myofibrillar hypertrophy. All right, but there is more. The second way to maximize motor unit recruitment is to accelerate submaximum loads when you are lifting lighter in the 50 to 80% of your 1 rep max range, or the 10 to 30 rep range. You need to lift your weight faster in order to maximize motor unit recruitment with that kind of loading. And that will promote the development of lean muscle mass, as well as training you to become more explosive, and is actually a specific type of strength training called starting strength, because it is training you to be faster as an athlete. And then the third way to maximize motor unit recruitment is high tension isometric exercises. All right, so this is where you are able to not even have to do reps with a heavy weight, but just hold on to it. And so when you take a load that is so heavy that it is even heavier than your maximum load, what you can do for just 1 rep, and you just try to hold on to that load for 5 to 10 seconds of maximum tension, that is another way that you can maximize motor unit recruitment, and something that I actually like better than doing 1 to 3 reps of a maximum load is just holding it, because for someone like me, it is safer and it also feels really cool. So there's 2 different ways of doing high tension isometric exercises. The first is called an overcoming isometric. This is where you are trying to move a weight that cannot be moved. Okay, so this could actually be pushing on a wall, or strapping so much weight on a weight belt that you know you're not going to even be able to do a rep. So you just hang there and activate the muscles and apply as much tension and force as you possibly can without actually moving. Or another thing that you can do is to just load a bar with too much weight and hold that bar, okay? But no matter how you do it, overcoming isometrics, where you are trying to move an immovable weight, is a extremely high tension isometric exercise that will maximize your motor unit recruitment. And the other type of isometric that also does this are isometric stretches under load. Something I have talked about several times before. When you go into a fully stretched out position under load, that is especially hypertrophic. So those are 2 different types of isometric exercises that produce the most tension and thus maximize the motor unit recruitment. And so those 3 different ways of maximizing motor unit recruitment should be utilized by you, and they can be done in different amounts. If you find that you like them different amounts, then you don't have to do them all equally, but just make sure that you are using each one of these 3 some of the time in your hypertrophy training, so that you are maximizing motor unit recruitment at least once in a while for certain exercises. So sometimes you want to be training with maximum loads, other times you want to be doing fast reps, and other times you want to be doing some extremely high tension isometrics. All right, if you're doing those 3 things, you will maximize motor unit recruitment and see massive hypertrophy. So make sure you make note of each one of those 3 now, and are remembering to incorporate them into your hypertrophy training programming.